5 regions on Earth sit on the precipice of nuclear conflict, with millions of lives hanging in the balance. While most of us go about our daily routines, geopolitical tensions in these hotspots escalate toward potential disaster. In this documentary, we'll map the 5 most dangerous nuclear flashpoints that experts believe could trigger the unthinkable. Some are familiar flashpoints that have simmered for decades, while others represent emerging threats that may surprise viewers. From territorial disputes in Asia to long-standing regional rivalries, these conflicts represent potential pathways to nuclear confrontation. Join us as we examine the complex forces driving these high-stakes standoffs and their global implications. North Korea's nuclear journey. North Korea's pursuit of nuclear weapons began in the shadow of the Korean War. In the 1950s, with the devastating conflict still fresh in the collective memory of the nation, Kim Il-sung established a research complex at Yongbyon. This facility, initially focused on peaceful nuclear energy, would become the cornerstone of the country's weapons program in the decades to follow. Soviet assistance provided the foundation, with Moscow helping construct a small research reactor that went critical in 1965. What started as a modest program under Soviet guidance evolved like a slow-burning fuse, first with plutonium extraction capabilities in the 1970s, then accelerating with the construction of a larger reactor capable of producing weapons-grade material in the 1980s. This gradual buildup reflected North Korea's precarious geopolitical position, sandwiched between major powers while facing a South Korea backed by American military might. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 marked a critical turning point. Suddenly stripped of its primary benefactor, North Korea faced economic catastrophe and heightened vulnerability. Nuclear weapons transformed from a military asset into an essential guarantee of regime survival. This existential calculus was evident when North Korea threatened to withdraw from the Nuclear Nonproliferation Treaty, NPT. In 1993, after the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, demanded special inspections upon detecting discrepancies in plutonium production. The 1994 agreed framework temporarily froze the program in exchange for energy assistance. But this arrangement collapsed in 2002 when evidence emerged of a clandestine uranium enrichment program. By January 2003, North Korea had formally withdrawn from the NPT, the only nation ever to do so after signing the treaty, demonstrating the regime's willingness to operate outside international norms when core interests were at stake. North Korea crossed the nuclear threshold on October 9, 2006, with its first nuclear test yielding less than 1 kiloton. 5 more tests followed, with explosive yields growing dramatically to an estimated 100 to 250 kilotons by 2017, many times more powerful than the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This progression demonstrated a technical mastery that consistently outpaced Western intelligence assessments. When Kim Jong-un assumed power following his father's death in 2011, he dramatically accelerated the nuclear program. Under his leadership, North Korea conducted 4 of its 6 nuclear tests and over 100 missile tests, more than his father and grandfather combined. This acceleration persisted despite international sanctions targeting North Korea's primary revenue sources, including coal, textiles, seafood, and overseas workers, costing the regime an estimated $2 to $3 billion annually in export revenue. The military expenses consume an estimated 15 to 25% of North Korea's GDP, among the highest rates globally, while the broader economy stagnates and food shortages persist. This prioritization reflects a fundamental strategic shift from conventional deterrence to nuclear capabilities. For decades, North Korea relied on its massive artillery force capable of striking Seoul within minutes as its primary deterrent. However, the growing technological and economic disparity with South Korea rendered this conventional approach increasingly less credible. The regime's legitimacy hinges on a narrative of perpetual threat, particularly from the United States. State propaganda constantly reminds citizens of American bombing during the Korean War, which destroyed nearly all major North Korean cities and killed an estimated 20% of the population. As one North Korean official bluntly explained their nuclear rationale, the Americans destroyed Iraq because it didn't have nuclear weapons. We will not make the same mistake. North Korea's missile program has evolved from basic Scud derivatives to sophisticated ICBMs. The Hwasong-15, tested in 2017, demonstrated a theoretical range exceeding 13,000 kilometers, sufficient to reach anywhere in the continental United States. Engineers have also mastered crucial miniaturization technologies for mounting nuclear warheads on these delivery systems, an achievement that many experts had predicted would take decades. Rather than focusing solely on strategic deterrence, the regime has developed a diverse nuclear arsenal ranging from tactical battlefield weapons to submarine-launched ballistic missiles designed for second strike capability. This diversity indicates an intention to integrate nuclear weapons into military planning at multiple levels. The program places North Korea in violation of multiple UN Security Council resolutions, the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, and the Joint Declaration on the Denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula signed with South Korea in 1992. What makes North Korea's nuclear doctrine particularly dangerous is its explicit threat of preemptive strikes. Its 2013 law outlines broad conditions for nuclear use, including responding to conventional attacks if perceived as threatening regime survival. This low threshold, combined with the regime's isolation, creates unique dangers in crisis scenarios. Beyond security, the nuclear program serves multiple objectives. Domestically, it provides legitimacy to the Kim dynasty as guardians of national sovereignty. Internationally, it has transformed an impoverished state into one commanding global attention. When Kim Jong-un threatened fire and fury in 2017, he received direct engagement from the U.S. president, recognition unattainable without nuclear leverage. The program also functions as an economic bargaining chip in a country with few alternatives. The pattern of provocation followed by offers to negotiate in exchange for sanctions relief has become a recognizable North Korean strategy, effectively using its weapons program as leverage to extract concessions from the international community. Patterns of provocation and brinkmanship. This extortion mechanism isn't merely opportunistic. It's a sophisticated strategy refined over decades. When we map North Korea's most aggressive actions against domestic pressures and international events, a disturbing pattern emerges that challenges conventional nuclear deterrence theory. The regime has perfected what analysts call the provocation cycle, a calculated sequence of escalation and de-escalation that follows a predictable rhythm. First, North Korea creates a crisis through missile tests or nuclear detonations. Then, it offers negotiations while demanding concessions. Once benefits are secured, the cycle begins anew with fresh provocations. March 2017 exemplifies this strategic choreography. Within a single month, North Korea launched 4 extended-range Scud missiles into the Sea of Japan, tested the high-thrust engine for its Hwasong-12 intermediate-range ballistic missile, and conducted additional missile tests, while simultaneously pursuing diplomatic outreach through unofficial channels. This calculated pressure resembles a deadly chess match, where each provocative move advances multiple objectives simultaneously, leaving adversaries uncertain which threat to counter first. The regime times these provocations with remarkable precision to exploit specific political circumstances. In 2012, as President Obama began his second term and new leadership emerged in China and South Korea, North Korea conducted a satellite launch and nuclear test within months. Major provocations frequently align with South Korean elections, U.S. military exercises, or leadership transitions across the region. The technological evolution of these threats tells its own story. The first nuclear test in 2006 yielded less than a kiloton, so small that analysts questioned its success. By 2017, the regime was testing devices with estimated yields between 100 to 250 kilotons, comparable to modern strategic warheads. In August 2017, North Korea launched a Hwasong-12 missile directly over Hokkaido, Japan, traveling approximately 2,700 kilometers before splashing into the Pacific. Japan's emergency alert system forced citizens into shelters, demonstrating the psychological impact these actions have even without physical damage. That same month, Kim Jong-un threatened to create an enveloping fire around Guam using Hwasong-12 missiles. Military officials announced they were carefully examining a plan to target the areas surrounding Andersen Air Force Base. This specific threat against U.S. territory represented a calculated escalation designed to force Washington's attention. The tactical precision becomes evident when examining provocations in relation to diplomatic engagement. In September 2005, North Korea committed to abandoning its nuclear program during six-party talks, then conducted its first nuclear test just 1 year later. In February 2012, the Leap Day Agreement secured North Korea's commitment to a moratorium on nuclear and missile tests in exchange for food aid. Within weeks, it announced a satellite launch that nullified the agreement. Foreign policy experts termed this approach coercive bargaining, using provocations to create leverage, then converting that leverage into tangible benefits like sanctions relief or economic assistance. The strategy exploits what game theorists call the risk of inadvertent escalation. By creating crises that could potentially spiral out of control, North Korea forces other powers to seek de-escalation through concessions. Kim Jong-un clearly articulated this thinking in 2018, stating that North Korea's nuclear forces constituted a powerful deterrent that prevents the U.S. from starting an adventurous war. However, unlike traditional deterrence focused on preventing attack, North Korea's approach uses the threat of conflict to extract benefits under conditions short of war. A dangerous evolution in this strategy has been the development of tactical nuclear weapons since 2019. During a January 2021 Party Congress, Kim announced plans to develop tactical nuclear weapons and miniaturized warheads. North Korea subsequently began testing various short-range systems potentially capable of delivering nuclear payloads, including the KN-23 and the KN-25 super-large multiple rocket launcher. These tactical nuclear weapons, designed for battlefield use against troop concentrations or command centers, significantly lower the threshold for nuclear use by creating scenarios where limited nuclear strikes might be considered in conventional conflicts. A frightening prospect, given the Korean Peninsula's volatility. This brinkmanship creates conditions where miscalculation becomes increasingly probable. In November 2017, a North Korean soldier defected across the DMZ under fire. Had those bullets caused casualties in South Korean territory, the incident could have triggered a military response during an already tense period following North Korea's sixth nuclear test. The regime's closed nature compounds these risks by limiting insight into internal deliberations, creating what strategists call the fog of crisis, conditions where misinterpretation becomes dangerously likely. Several specific scenarios could trigger actual nuclear weapon use. First, a use it or lose it situation where North Korea believes a preemptive strike against its facilities is imminent. Second, internal regime instability that might prompt nuclear use as a desperate measure. Third, conventional conflict escalation. With Seoul just 35 miles from the DMZ and over 25 million people within artillery range, even limited exchanges could rapidly intensify. The international community's response pattern, sanctions following provocations, partial relief during diplomatic engagement, has inadvertently reinforced this cycle by creating a predictable framework that North Korea manipulates to its advantage. Equally concerning is how nuclear brinkmanship has normalized over time. When North Korea first tested a nuclear device in 2006, it triggered international alarm and unified condemnation. By 2017, after the sixth test, the global response had become almost routine, demonstrating how even nuclear provocations lose their shock value through repetition. Regional destabilization effects. As North Korea's nuclear tests became commonplace, something far more concerning was happening beneath the surface of regional politics. The strategic calculations of every major power in Northeast Asia were quietly shifting, creating a dangerous new dynamic where traditional security arrangements no longer seem adequate against an unpredictable nuclear neighbor. For decades, South Korea and Japan operated under a simple security equation. Facing conventional threats from North Korea and others, they relied on America's extended deterrence, including its nuclear umbrella, while maintaining their own strictly non-nuclear military postures. This arrangement formed the cornerstone of Northeast Asian security architecture since the Korean War. The American nuclear umbrella allowed these countries to focus on economic development rather than military buildups, contributing to regional stability. But the equation has fundamentally changed. As Pyongyang's nuclear arsenal grows more sophisticated with each test, both Seoul and Tokyo have begun questioning whether America's security guarantees remain sufficient. The question strikes at existential fears. When a North Korean missile can reach Tokyo or Seoul in minutes, the credibility of U.S. promises to retaliate becomes the difference between survival and annihilation. This growing uncertainty has triggered a cascading military transformation across the region, with South Korea leading the shift. Seoul has developed the kill chain system, a network of sensors, intelligence platforms, and precision-guided munitions designed to detect and preemptively neutralize North Korean nuclear threats. This marks a fundamental pivot from defensive to offensive doctrine, exemplified by Hyun-Masiri's ballistic missiles capable of striking anywhere in North Korea within minutes, and F-35A stealth fighters equipped to penetrate North Korean airspace undetected. Public sentiment in South Korea has shifted dramatically. Recent polls show over 70% of South Koreans now support indigenous nuclear armament. In 2023, then-President Yoon Suk-yeol publicly acknowledged that South Korea would consider developing nuclear weapons if North Korean threats intensified further, a statement unimaginable a decade ago. Japan's security evolution has followed a parallel trajectory despite starting from different constitutional constraints. Article 9 of Japan's 1947 Constitution limited its military to purely defensive capabilities, but North Korea's provocations have accelerated Japan's departure from these post-war restrictions. The Japanese self-defense forces have acquired Aegis-equipped destroyers and Patriot missile defense batteries while reinterpreting constitutional limits to permit collective self-defense, allowing Japanese forces to support allies under attack. In 2022, Japan announced plans to double defense spending to 2% of GDP by 2027, the most significant military expansion since World War II, including development of counterstrike capabilities that would allow Japan to hit enemy bases preemptively. The security situation has deteriorated to the point where Japan, the only nation to have experienced nuclear attacks, has seen serious political discussion about nuclear options, with former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe suggesting Japan should consider hosting U.S. nuclear weapons similar to NATO arrangements. This regional arms race has spread like ripples in a pond. Taiwan has extended the range of its indigenous missiles. Australia has pursued nuclear-powered submarines through the AUKUS partnership. Traditional rivalries have given way to new security alignments, with South Korea and Japan historically divided by colonial-era grievances, strengthening military cooperation through trilateral anti-submarine warfare exercises with the United States in 2022. America's military posture has transformed in response, deploying THAAD missile defense systems in South Korea and increasing the rotation of strategic assets like nuclear-capable bombers through the region. These deployments have created second-order effects, with China viewing systems like THAAD as threatening its own nuclear deterrent. Beijing has responded with increased military activities and economic pressure on South Korea, demonstrating how North Korea's nuclear program has catalyzed broader strategic competition. The region now faces dangerously compressed decision timelines, with multiple nuclear powers operating in close proximity. A missile defense test could be misinterpreted as offensive preparation, while military exercises might be seen as attack preludes. The absence of crisis communication mechanisms between rivals heightens the risk that miscalculation could spiral into conflict. North Korea's nuclear development has weakened nonproliferation norms, creating concerning incentives for other threatened states. Countries observe how North Korea's nuclear status has forced international accommodation despite sanctions, potentially encouraging reconsideration of non-nuclear positions if confidence in American extended deterrence continues to erode. Strategic impacts extend beyond Northeast Asia. Australia now explicitly accounts for North Korean capabilities in defense planning. ASEAN nations have strengthened anti-proliferation positions while simultaneously increasing defense spending. India and Pakistan study how North Korea manages its nuclear status for potential lessons in their own security contexts. Perhaps most profound is the gradual normalization of North Korea as a nuclear state. What was once unthinkable has become accepted reality, evident in how diplomatic language has shifted from denuclearization to arms control or risk reduction. This tacit acknowledgement signals to potential proliferators that nuclear acquisition, while costly, can ultimately succeed despite international opposition. A dangerous lesson that threatens decades of non-proliferation efforts and regional stability. Global proliferation concerns. While the world reluctantly adjusts to a nuclear North Korea, a more insidious threat emerges. The blueprint for nuclear defiance it provides to other ambitious states. North Korea didn't just build bombs. It created a playbook for breaking the rules and getting away with it. This strategic blueprint has profound implications for global security. Iran, despite facing similar international pressure, has watched North Korea's nuclear journey with keen interest. Evidence suggests that Iranian officials have been present at North Korean nuclear and missile tests, absorbing technical lessons while studying diplomatic tactics. The countries maintain a transactional relationship where missile technology flows to Iran while hard currency flows back to Pyongyang. North Korea's proliferation activities extend beyond Iran. In September 2007, Israeli warplanes destroyed a facility at Al-Kabar in eastern Syria. International Atomic Energy Agency investigations confirmed it was a nearly operational nuclear reactor built with North Korean assistance. The reactor's design resembled North Korea's Yongbyon facility, with satellite imagery identifying North Korean personnel at the site, all while Syria remained a nuclear non-proliferation treaty signatory. Similarly, throughout the 2000s, intelligence agencies detected cooperation between Myanmar's military junta and North Korea, with defectors reporting North Korean technicians working on underground facilities and suspicious shipments moving between countries. What makes these proliferation activities particularly dangerous is North Korea's sophisticated evasion of international controls. The country operates extensive networks of front companies in China, Singapore, and Malaysia. These entities employ false documentation, shell companies, and indirect shipping routes to acquire dual-use technologies with both industrial and weapons applications. A 2017 UN report identified 13 North Korean banking representatives still operating internationally despite explicit sanctions prohibiting such presence. The maritime smuggling operations reveal the depth of this circumvention. In the dark waters of the East China Sea, North Korean vessels silently approach foreign tankers, extinguishing identification lights. Within hours, millions of dollars worth of coal transfers from one ship to another, while restricted petroleum products flow in the opposite direction. The ships then disperse, often changing names and registration flags before their next rendezvous. A single such midnight transaction can generate critical funding for nuclear development while importing the very materials sanctions aim to restrict. The normalization of North Korea as a nuclear state represents perhaps the most profound regional change. This tacit acknowledgement, evident in how diplomatic language has shifted from denuclearization to arms control, signals to potential proliferators that nuclear acquisition can succeed despite opposition. This diplomatic retreat represents more than semantic surrender. It weakens a critical global safeguard. Countries like Iran now recalculate their nuclear ambitions, observing how an impoverished nation forced global powers to accommodate its nuclear reality. This erosion diminishes non-proliferation commitments globally. When threatened states observe how nuclear weapons have essentially guaranteed North Korea's regime survival despite isolation, the security calculus changes fundamentally. Saudi Arabia has explicitly stated its nuclear intentions regarding Iran, With Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman telling CBS News in 2018, Saudi Arabia does not want to acquire any nuclear bomb, but without a doubt, if Iran developed a nuclear bomb, we will follow suit as soon as possible. The South Korean response illustrates this shifting landscape. As a model non-nuclear state with advanced technical capabilities, South Korea's growing openness to nuclear acquisition represents a significant normative change. Beyond strong public support for indigenous nuclear weapons, influential political figures now openly advocate reconsidering South Korea's non-nuclear status. Former Foreign Minister Song Min-soon argued that South Korea should start reviewing the sovereign right to withdraw from the NPT. Taiwan presents another concerning case. Though officially committed to peaceful nuclear development, Taiwan maintained a covert weapons program until U.S. pressure forced its abandonment in the 1980s. With China's increasingly aggressive posture and North Korea's nuclear deterrent success, security analysts worry that Taiwan might reconsider nuclear options despite the potential diplomatic fallout. This undermining of institutional norms carries cascading effects. U.S. intelligence assessments indicate 15 to 20 countries currently possess the technical capability to develop nuclear weapons quickly if they made the political decision.